You posted something. Maybe a photo you spent longer choosing than you want to admit. Maybe a caption you rewrote 3 times. You hit publish, and then, without even consciously deciding to, you went back to check. Maybe 30 seconds later, maybe 2 minutes. And when the notifications started coming in, something happened inside you that was immediate and physical. A small release, a brief warmth, a loosening in the chest that felt almost like relief. And when the notifications slowed down, or when a post you genuinely cared about barely moved, something different happened. Not quite pain, not quite sadness, but something in that neighborhood. A quiet deflation, a subtle sense that something was wrong, not with the post, but with you. Most people call this a bad habit. Some call it vanity. The self-help industry calls it low self-esteem. But none of those labels come close to explaining what is actually happening inside your brain when you seek and receive social validation online. Because what is happening is not shallow. It is not weak. It is one of the most ancient, deeply encoded survival programs your nervous system knows how to run. And once you understand the neuroscience behind it, you will stop judging yourself for the way you feel, and you will start seeing the trap for exactly what it is. Here is where it begins. In your brain, there is a chemical called dopamine. You have almost certainly heard of it, usually described as the pleasure chemical, but that description is incomplete and a little misleading. Dopamine is less about pleasure itself and more about the anticipation of reward. It is the chemical that drives seeking behavior. It is what motivates you to pursue food when you are hungry, connection when you are lonely, safety when you feel threatened. Dopamine does not reward you for arriving. It pushes you to keep moving toward what your brain has identified as necessary. This is important because it means dopamine is fundamentally a survival mechanism. It exists to keep you alive by keeping you motivated to pursue the things that historically kept humans alive. And what kept humans alive more consistently and more critically than almost anything else was belonging to a group. Social acceptance was not a nicety in the environment your brain evolved in. It was the difference between life and death. A human alone on the savannah was a dead human. Access to food, shelter, protection, mating, and the raising of children all depended on your acceptance within the social group, which means your brain evolved to treat social approval as a survival-level reward, not metaphorically, literally. The same neural systems that process physical rewards like food and warmth also process social rewards like praise, admiration, and acceptance. Neuroscientists have shown that receiving a compliment activates the same brain regions as receiving money. Being liked, validated, and approved of registers in your nervous system as a resource, something you genuinely need to survive. Now take that ancient wiring and connect it to a platform that has been engineered by teams of behavioral psychologists and engineers to deliver social approval in the most dopamine-optimized format possible. A like is not just a like. It is a quantified, visible, instant signal that the social group has approved of you. A comment is social attention. A share is social amplification. Followers are a public metric of how many people consider you worth their sustained attention. Every one of these metrics maps directly onto the social evaluation systems your brain has been running for 200,000 years. And every time those metrics go up, your brain releases dopamine, not as a luxury, as a necessity signal, as a "you are safe, you belong, you are valued by the group" signal. This is the trap. Not because wanting to be liked is wrong, but because you are now seeking a survival-level reward through a mechanism that was designed to keep you seeking indefinitely, without ever fully arriving. Think about what actually happens when a post performs well. There is a brief surge of good feeling, a few minutes, maybe a few hours, and then it fades. The dopamine spike dissipates. And because your brain registered that spike as a survival reward, its next instruction is to find another one. More posts, more content, more performance, more seeking. The reward is never quite enough to satisfy because it was never designed to satisfy. It was designed to motivate continued engagement with the platform, which means the system benefits when the reward always leaves you wanting slightly more. Let us sit with a specific example so this does not stay abstract. Imagine a woman named Sophia. She is 28, works in marketing, is genuinely good at her job, has real friends, and a life she mostly enjoys. But she started a personal Instagram account 2 years ago, initially just to share things she loved. Somewhere along the way, it became something else. Now she spends roughly 90 minutes a day creating, curating, posting, and monitoring content. She has started turning down invitations to things because she is behind on content. She has cried twice because posts she thought were meaningful got almost no engagement. She has spent entire evenings in a fog of restless dissatisfaction without being able to explain why, and then realized the next morning that she had been unconsciously waiting for a notification that never came. Sophia does not think of herself as an approval-seeking person. In every other area of her life, she is remarkably self-sufficient. But on this one axis, she is running a compulsive survival loop that she built slowly, without realizing it, by repeatedly training her brain to associate social metrics with safety. The neuroscience behind what happened to Sophia is called operant conditioning, a learning mechanism identified by psychologist B.F. Skinner, and since confirmed in enormous depth by neuroscience research. Your brain learns what behaviors lead to rewards, and it encodes those behaviors as worth repeating. Every time a post received validation, Sophia's brain logged creating and posting content leads to social approval, which is a survival reward. Over time, the seeking behavior itself became encoded as necessary, not just useful. Her nervous system began to generate anxiety when she was not posting, not monitoring, not engaging, because the absence of the seeking behavior started to feel like the absence of safety. This is a specific and well-documented psychological phenomenon called variable ratio reinforcement, and it is the same mechanism that makes slot machines the most addictive form of gambling in existence. The key is unpredictability. When rewards come in irregular, unpredictable intervals rather than consistently, the dopamine system activates more intensely and more persistently. You never know which post will land. You never know which photo will get a flood of engagement versus nothing. That unpredictability keeps the seeking behavior running at a constant high because your brain cannot find a pattern that tells it when to stop looking. The variable ratio schedule is the most resistant to extinction of any learning pattern, which means once it is encoded, it is genuinely hard to unlearn without deliberate intervention. Beyond dopamine, there is another brain system at work here that goes even deeper. It is the system that processes social rejection, and it is connected to something called the threat detection network. Earlier, we talked about how social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. This is equally true in reverse. The anticipation of social rejection activates the threat detection network before any rejection has actually occurred. This means that the hours after posting, the period of waiting and checking, are not neutral. Your brain is running a low-level threat detection program that entire time, scanning the social environment for signs of rejection, counting the absence of approval as a preliminary warning signal. Every refresh that shows no new notification is not experienced as neutral. It is experienced as ambiguous threat data. Is the silence indifference? Disapproval? Have I misjudged the group? Am I less valued than I thought? Your nervous system is asking these questions automatically, below the threshold of conscious thought, and generating anxiety as the output. This is why the period after posting can feel so uncomfortable, even when nothing bad has happened. Nothing bad does not feel safe to your nervous system. Your threat detection network is not looking for confirmation that everything is fine. It is looking for evidence that everything is fine. And an absence of likes is not the same thing as evidence. So it keeps looking, and you keep checking. And the anxiety of waiting is, neurologically speaking, a genuine form of stress. Not a dramatic one, not the kind that stops your life, but the slow, consistent, low-grade kind that drains your energy and erodes your baseline mood over time. Consider what this means for a woman who has been in this loop for 2 or 3 years. Her nervous system has been running this threat detection cycle thousands of times. After each post, after each story, after each video, the anxiety of waiting has been a consistent background noise in her daily experience. And over time, that anxiety has begun to attach not just to specific posts, but to her sense of herself more broadly. Because what she is actually measuring with every metric is not, did my content perform well? She is measuring, on a primal level, am I acceptable? Am I wanted? Do I belong? These are not questions about content. They are questions about identity and worth. And she has been putting those questions to the judgment of an algorithm and a shifting crowd of strangers, and then using the results to answer them. Psychologists describe this as external locus of validation, which means that your sense of your own worth is primarily sourced from outside yourself, rather than from an internal standard. This is not unique to social media. Humans have always sought external validation to some degree, because we are social animals and the feedback of others genuinely matters to how we orient within social groups. But there is a meaningful difference between naturally absorbing social feedback as one input among many and training your brain to treat the approval of strangers on a dopamine-optimized platform as the primary signal of your value. The first is human. The second is a trap. And the trap is built so seamlessly into the architecture of these platforms that most women step into it before they ever understood it existed. Here is something that reveals the depth of the trap clearly. Think about the last time a post of yours performed really well. Hold that memory. Now ask yourself honestly, how long did the good feeling last? An hour? A day? Did it actually change how you felt about yourself in any sustained way? Did it make the next post feel less necessary? Or did it briefly satisfy you and then raise the stakes, making the next post feel like it had to at least match that performance? For most women, the answer is the latter. A successful post does not fill the validation need. It temporarily quiets it while simultaneously expanding it. Because now your baseline expectation has shifted. Now your brain has new data about what good enough looks like, and the bar moved upward. This is the hedonic treadmill applied to social performance. You keep walking, the scenery keeps changing, but you never actually arrive anywhere. There was a woman named Priya who was a talented photographer long before she had an Instagram account. She shot for herself for years, and the pleasure was intrinsic. It came from the act of seeing, a framing, of capturing something real. When she started posting her work online, the response was good, and for a while she felt that the external recognition was enhancing what she already loved. But over about 18 months, something shifted. She started shooting with the feed in mind before she started shooting with her own eye. She began choosing subjects she thought would perform, rather than subjects that moved her. She found herself looking at her photos, not through the lens of her own aesthetic, but through the imagined lens of her audience. The intrinsic pleasure, the thing that had been hers for years, got colonized by the external reward loop. She had traded her internal compass for a crowd's approval, and the exchange had happened so gradually that she did not notice it until she picked up her camera one afternoon and felt nothing. Psychologists call this phenomenon the Overjustification Effect. When you introduce external rewards into an activity that was previously intrinsically motivated, the external reward gradually takes over as the dominant motivation, and the intrinsic pleasure diminishes. Your brain, always optimizing for efficiency, decides it no longer needs to generate internal reward when external reward is available. The problem is that external rewards are contingent and unpredictable, and intrinsic pleasure is yours regardless of what anyone else thinks. When you lose the intrinsic, you become entirely dependent on the external, and that dependency is the heart of the validation trap. The aha moment, if there is one in all of this, is this. The longing you feel for validation is not a character flaw, it is a survival program. The anxiety you feel when it does not come is not weakness. It is your threat detection system doing its job in an environment it was never designed for. The way these platforms feel almost biologically necessary to you sometimes is not an accident or an exaggeration. They were deliberately engineered to feel that way by people who understood your neuroscience better than you had been given the chance to understand it yourself. And the fact that a like can feel in the moment like something close to survival, that is not you being irrational. That is you being human in a system that was built to exploit the most ancient parts of what being human means. Knowing this does not immediately dissolve the loop. Insight is not the same as rewiring, but it is the prerequisite. You cannot change a pattern you cannot see, and you cannot see a pattern clearly when you believe it says something shameful about you. When you understand that the validation loop is a neurological mechanism and not a moral failing, you create space, and in that space, something new becomes possible. The next step is figuring out what to replace it with, because you cannot simply remove a survival signal without offering your nervous system something real to return to. That is where the identity work begins. That is the territory we go into next. If you recognized yourself anywhere in this video, if you have ever felt that hollow mix of relief and disappointment after checking your phone for notifications, leave the word likes in the comments. One word is enough. It tells me you are ready to go deeper, and it helps this video find the women who need it most. Subscribe, because every episode in this series builds on the last, and where we are going from here is towards something that actually lasts.